We want to talk about psychological warfare here for a minute. Make sure when you're starting a match, hey guys, thanks for checking out the video today. We're here to answer 5 questions you didn't know you had about sparring jiu-jitsu. A submission is loosely defined in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a technique or a hold that we try to apply to our training partners, or they try to apply to us, or in competition to our opponents, that could be done to the neck, arm, body, or legs with enough force or restriction to cause us to have to tap out or submit. Submission is also a term used in combat sports or training to declare a winner. So the idea is that opponent A may win over opponent B via submission, as opposed to boxing or another sport that has striking, where they use knockout as another term that an opponent could win over the other. Having submissions in our training in our gym is a safe way that we can train with our partners as to minimize injury. So the idea is that when someone taps, if I have them in a lock or they have me in a lock, we get to quickly assess what happened in that situation, learn from our mistakes, and move on. Remember guys, a submission is like this fictitious magical thing. So it only happens inside of our gym or training area and in competition. If someone was ever going to really attack you, don't ever count on the fact of tapping out to save your butt. In Jiu-Jitsu, we oftentimes see guys slap hands and then fist bump before they engage in the fight. It's kind of a customary engagement or a respectful gesture that they're doing towards each other. Kind of like we see in boxing or in MMA. After the ref says fight, you'll see them touch gloves or like even slap hands or something like that. How it used to be is that competitors would actually shake hands. So in that position there, while shaking hands, over the course of time, there started to be some dirty players in the jiu-jitsu community, and what they'd do is start getting advanced grips and using that to their advantage. So they wouldn't shake hands and release. They just shake hands and then go from there. So naturally, people just started to slap hands and do a quick fist bump out of respect. The origins of the whole slap bump thing are all over the place. Some say it's the skate and surf culture from California. Some say it's Midwestern farmers. I have no idea, but likely where I think it came from is that after the real handshakes started to go south and guys pulling on the hands, they wanted to slap hands and maybe just show a little bit more respect, so they added that little fist bump right there. One of my favorite stories goes like this. When Grandmaster Helio Gracie invented leverage, he also invented the fist bump. So obviously that's the true one. In all honesty, I've heard all kinds of stories about it. Maybe we'll never know the full origin story of the slap bump. Some mysteries of this earth are best left unknown. But the fact of the matter stays the same. It's kind to respect your opponent before you destroy them. We want to talk about psychological warfare here for a minute. If you want to learn the big deal slap bump, just to make sure you let everyone know that you're better than them, make sure when you're starting a match, you slap as you normally would, but as soon as you go to do the fist bump, flatten your hand and cover their fist with paper, just like in rock, paper, scissors. Obviously, they're rock and you're paper, so you're beating them. Get in their head first and you're guaranteed victory. Problem. Maybe your coach is asking you guys to do positional sparring like cross-side or back mount or whatever. If you're in a position like having someone on your back and you can't effectively slap punch to signify the go, then we have to use another tool to tell our partners that we're ready to rock. So for example, if someone was cross-side on me and I'm on the bottom, I'm in the disadvantageous position. So the single tap usually is started or initiated by the person in the most disadvantageous position. Why? Because they're the ones that have to be ready. So the whole idea being is that give them that common courtesy. You know, we could say, are you ready or whatever, but that single tap on the leg or on the body or somewhere where they can feel it is what signifies the start or go. This might seem like a no-brainer or something that everyone should know, but there are a lot of people that don't get explained this thoroughly enough. This is a major point in our safety in our training. At our gym, I teach students 3 ways to tap out if necessary. So the best way is I'm getting choked out, I can't escape that submission, pressure's getting tight. I try to take one of my hands and tap out on my partner. We react faster to touch than we do to sound or visual, so if you can, tap out on them. If you can't, for whatever reason, tap out on them, take your hand and you can tap on the ground. Try to tap out loudly enough with your hand so that they could not just see it, but hopefully hear it as well. Now, in some situations, I can't tap out with my hands. If I have someone that's tied up my arms, I have to do what's known as a verbal tap. So in any position, let's say you couldn't successfully tap out with your hand for whatever reason, you can shout a verbal tap by just saying tap, and that signifies to your partner that it's time to let go or stop. Make sure that it's loud enough, because gyms can get quite noisy, so that they can definitely hear you. The third way that I teach people to tap out is if you can't use your hands, say they're all tied up, you're in a choke or something that's restricting your ability to speak clearly or loud enough for your opponent to hear you, is tap out with your foot. Same thing as tapping with your hand on the ground. Try to tap loud enough so that your partner could hear it. So again, the best way, tap out with your hand on your opponent. If you can't do that on the ground, we can verbally tap or we can tap with our foot. So we have to have trust going both ways. I need to trust that my partner who's attempting to attack me is not going to totally destroy my joint or choke me unconscious or try and break something on me. And they have to trust that when they're practicing their art of jiu-jitsu, that I'm going to tap when my joint or my neck or I've had enough personally. So make sure you always respect the tap, whether it's you tapping or your partner tapping. That's the time to let go or to relax. Sparring in jiu-jitsu can be a very uncomfortable thing. Now again, it might seem like, oh, this is a real simple thing, just tap out when you have too much. But sometimes, guys, people get it in their head that they're only allowed to tap out to a submission or some kind of a lock. That's not true. If you need to stop because you can't breathe, you're getting claustrophobic, you need to use the washroom, your nose starts bleeding, whatever, you can tap out at any time that you need to, and your partner must respect that tap. We're trying to actually simulate an actual attack, but in the safest way possible. So just keep in mind that it's not just a physical thing, it can be a mental and emotional thing just as much. So make sure that you know where your boundaries are, and if you need to stop for whatever reason, you stop. The whole idea here is that newer students aren't going to be as comfortable being in high fatigue situations. It's sweaty, it's hot, someone's in your face, in your bubble, someone's putting an immense amount of pressure, hindering you from breathing. If you need to take a break, do so. Now granted, I want us to be able to push. We need to get used to more uncomfortable situations and learning how to escape. But the fact is that can only go to a point. We need to take steps at getting used to combat. We need to take small steps in getting used to the pressures that are on the ground in jiu-jitsu. You do that in small steps, not by doing it all in one class. Now, some people will say to you, you know, an attacker's not going to really care about your feelings while they're, you know, punching you in the face or holding you on the ground. I get that. But remember, guys, what we're trying to build is a resistance or a resilience to pressure on the ground, a resilience to the amount of fatigue that can happen, muscle fatigue. You know, we're training to try and adapt to these things. But the fact is that's done gradually. It's not done in one night. There's a lot more to tapping out and some different examples that I would like to demonstrate on an opponent or on a partner. If you guys would like to see a video on that, just shoot us a message in the comments below. We'd love to make one for you. Should I wear a groin cup? Obviously, ladies, this isn't for you, but the guys need to know. It's important to know that in gi tournaments specifically, there is a rule of no groin cups allowed. So in our training, there will be no groin cups allowed either. Here are a couple of reasons why. Number one, you're not wearing one in the street, so you shouldn't be wearing one in training. Number two, it can be used as a leverage point. So for example, if I had somebody in an arm bar, that groin cup can be a higher fulcrum point or leverage point than just the side of my hip or groin when I'm doing that arm bar. Number three, they can be used as a pressure point actuator. So in full mount, I could dig that groin cup into my opponent's sternum or any other part of the body. So there's three reasons why a groin cup is not allowed in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So what are some basic rules about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu sparring? Well, you might come from a school that's more sport-oriented and teaches very specific IBJJF rules and follows those very tightly. You might come from another lineage that has a little bit more of an emphasis on self-defense. Regardless, here's some tips to help you understand why certain things happen at a BJJ sparring class. Number one, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu means the gentle art. You cannot strike your opponent, so there is no punching or kicking in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. If you're doing an MMA class and the rules are defined that way, that's fine, but in gi jiu-jitsu and most non-gi jiu-jitsu sparring classes, there's no striking whatsoever. It's literally just grappling and submissions. Number two, You can't use your belt offensively. So you could grip your opponent's belt, you could grip the tail end of it, you could grip around the side of it, but if your belt's come off, you can't use it to strangle somebody or try and tie them up. We'll leave that for the rodeo. Number 3, if you get thrown into a submission and you try and intentionally go out of bounds to think that that's going to reset or stop the match at that point, guess what? You're right, but it'll end in you getting disqualified. So if you get put into a submission, make sure that you're actively defending it and not intentionally trying to go out of bounds in that position. If it's just training inside the gym, not at a tournament, just be mindful of your partner's training areas. So for example, a loose rule that we use here is if there's a team grappling over here and they get too close to me grappling with someone else, whichever team has the higher rank person, that team gets to stay and the lower rank people get to move away. It's just taking a little bit of safety and proximity, because when we start throwing each other around and moving, accidents can happen if 2 pairs of people are getting too close grappling. Worry about practicing your art. I'd rather someone be good at jiu-jitsu than really good at the linear knowledge of the rules. Of course, it's important if you're going to compete, but the idea is it's more important for you to be a good jiu-jitsuist than it is for you guys to have a bunch of stuff memorized. Hey guys, thanks for watching the video again. Please consider liking and subscribing, and if you want to see when a brand new video comes out, just click that bell. As always, leave a comment down below if there's anything that you'd like to see us cover a video on, and we'll see you in the next one.